Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. Guys, we live in such a strange world, and I really believe that UFOs, orbs, Bigfoot, cryptid, dogman, they're all connected in some way. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a UFO encounter that my dad had back in the early 80s when I was about 5 years old. What makes this thing so intriguing to me is it happened probably less than 2 to 3 miles from where I had my experience with Bigfoot. We're going to dive into all of that tonight, his UFO encounter. He's going to break all that down. Now, my dad is one of the most honest people that I've ever met, and if he tells you something, you can take it to the bank. So this is a really, really good episode, guys. Lots of information. As always, if you've got a mystery you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. I could not do this show without you guys and your encounters, so please send those to me. I really look forward to them. But let's jump right into the story.
Why don't you tell us kind of what happened and take us back to the early 80s?
All right, yeah, the early 80s. Yeah, but this little story just been stamped into my memory and you just can't get rid of it. And I'll just share it with you a little bit. It's not real long, but it is interesting. Back in the early 80s, like we said, my wife and I, Cheryl and Josh, just a little guy, were coming from Piney, was out on 64. And so it was not dark yet. It was just still dusk dark and you could see good. But I was driving and we come across Piney Bay, the bridge there. And I don't know why I did what I did, but I just happened to look off to my left and over the Arkansas River, I saw a disc in the sky, and it was up quite a ways.
How big was it?
Well, I couldn't tell at that time.
Okay.
I don't know, I suppose it looked from that distance, which was a long ways across that fields and stuff. I don't know, all I can remember, it looked like it might have been as big as a car at that distance. And the thing I noticed was, when the farther I went, it stayed pretty much even with me, and it was a long ways across the fields, but I could see it, but I knew where the river was. I knew which direction it flowed and everything. So I just kept going, and every once in a while I take this curious glance off to my left, and it was still there. No farther ahead, no farther behind, pretty much even. And I thought, that dumb thing's following the car. Said, well, I couldn't get away from it. So I just kept going, and there's a place that we had gotten to, and I noticed though that it had been getting closer, and the farther I went, the closer it got, and I thought, this is really strange and a little scary.
Yeah.
So Josh, we got to where I was getting ready. We went through. That's what it was. We went through Lamar, and was going to turn on Brick Plant Road, which is off to the left. Well, by that time, that it was a disc, and it was just really close, and it was treetop level by that time, high by that time. And so I pulled over on the right side of the road just to see what was going to happen. Well, what happened was when the disc got a little closer, it went down behind some trees.
That's
and there
pretty
was
scary.
a house. Yeah, there was a house right there on the left called the Kettle Hut place. It went down behind those trees, and I had pulled over and stopped and was going to see what would happen next. Well, what happened next was that thing came up from behind the trees over top of the house, and it looked as big as the house. And there it was, hovering right there above the treetops, above the house, and with blue, if I'm not mistaken, it might have had blue and white, or no, it was red and white lights going around the bottom of the thing. And it just so happened there's a man across the street changing a flat tire. So I hollered at the guy, I said, hey, mister, what's that? And I pointed up. He turned around and he said, oh, I don't know what that is. Well, I had just about all that I could handle, because I had Josh was in the back seat.
Yeah, it was
guy.
5, right? About 5.
About 5 years old. And I thought, nah, this is just too dangerous for me.
Yeah.
So we took off and went home, and I never saw anything like that close anyway. And but it's still stamped in my memory. I
Yeah.
can see each progression as that UFO, and that's what it was,
Well, sure. Yeah.
followed us down the road, and it just scared us.
That is, I don't remember that. I was obviously too young to remember that, and I'm glad that you were smart enough to get us out of there. But did you have any kind of feeling when you saw it? Was there anything?
Well,
Sure, it was fear.
Well, fear, and I was getting a little anxious because I had my family in the car, and I thought, well, what if this fool thing tries to do something stupid? You know, and I thought I just couldn't stay. I was just getting a little leery of it, and I thought, this is just time to get out of here.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't believe in little green men. I don't believe that.
No.
I think, is it something our military could have? Well, that's always possible.
Yeah.
But why would they follow a little car down the road? I don't think it was. I think it's more, and some people may laugh or think, but I think it's a little more demonic to me than anything.
I think so. I think a lot of these demons UFOs and stuff that are people seeing, I think it's demonic. I don't think it's little green men from Mars. I think it's something that our government probably knows about, and they probably utilize, and they're probably doing who knows what with.
Yeah.
But I wish I wish I was old enough to remember that, because I don't remember any of that. But there was never anything in the papers, right? You never saw anything again.
No.
For our listeners, why don't you describe the area? Because it's a really rural area in the country. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
We were next to the Arkansas River, right?
Yes, we were close to the Arkansas River, and I don't remember how far it was to the river. A mile, maybe? Half a mile to the river from 64 Highway, maybe, where we were at. And there's also a railroad. You got the 64 Highway, a railroad track, and then fields, and then the river. And it is a beautiful area. And on the other side of the river is a mountain.
Yeah.
So, it's really wooded.
It's really rural.
Yeah, very rural.
It's a perfect area for the government if they were going to do some kind of experiments or whatever.
Yeah.
As a perfect area for something like that.
Yeah, it would be perfect for that,
Yeah.
And, we've all seen things
Right.
we couldn't describe
Yeah.
really, but this was pretty obvious.
He's told me this story so many times, and it's always intrigued me. But I know you talked a little bit about it, but kind of describe how big you think it was once it was there close to you when you stopped.
Well, if you take a standard size house, I'm not talking about a mansion,
Right.
a little farmhouse,
Yeah.
and that thing was as big as the farmhouse, or a little more defined. The dimensions were a little bit bigger, maybe.
Yeah.
And it looked to me like it was 15, maybe 20 feet tall
Wow.
in width,
Wow.
And
that's
it was a monster. And I know that house was probably at least 30 or 40 feet wide. And so this thing was 20 feet thick. We'll just call it thick. That's what it looked like to me. And when I saw the lights going around, it just hovered there like, hey, we're watching you.
Wow. I know. Would you, this is kind of a silly question, and I think I know the answer, but would you ever want to see something like that again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love to watch things in the sky, at night. It's so beautiful. And you never know. I keep an eye out.
Yeah, I would too. This is probably where I get my my interest in this kind of stuff, mysteries and stuff. It came from my dad.
It
That's
could be very well.
so. For you guys listening, my dad is a published author, and it's kind of a really unique story of how that happened. But why don't you tell them how you became an author, Dad? Because that story, it really is this miracle. You talk about mysteries. This is one of the greatest mysteries I've ever heard, and it was just one of these things that I thought we were going to lose my dad, and he's here today. Published so many books. A lot of different Christian fiction books, murder mysteries, things like that. But why don't you tell them how you became an author? Because it's a really incredible story.
Yeah. Well, when I was a little boy, I suppose I was in the 3rd grade, I got a head injury, and I don't really want to go into how it happened because, it's just what it is. And so I had to suffer with that through education because it really injured me. And I had a hard time through school. But when I got out of school and all of that, I felt just fine. I wasn't hurting or anything, but I did have that head injury. And so years later, I began to have headaches or Do you remember us going to Silver Dollar City?
Oh, I remember.
And do you remember me
Yeah.
getting dizzy?
I do.
And I couldn't leave the room.
Yeah,
for a
you were
while?
stuck in the hotel.
And I didn't
remember.
know I was having trouble.
Yeah.
I just thought, well,
Yeah, you didn't know.
headache, no
Yeah.
big deal. Well, in 2005, it kept getting worse.
Yeah.
And Cheryl and I worked at Clarksville High School for many years. And I got up one morning, I said, sweetheart, you're going to have to take me to the hospital. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I was really bad. But she got me to the hospital, and they med-flighted me to Little Rock. And I woke up on the operating table looking around, and there's a bunch of guys standing there in blue suits. I thought, what is this and where am I?
You thought the UFO came back.
Yeah, the UFO came to get me. Anyway, I might be a little stubborn.
I can attest to that. He is stubborn. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, that stubbornness maybe helped me get through.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
But anyway, they told me, said, Randy, you're having brain surgery. I said, no, I'm not. You're nuts. Mister, you talking about brain surgery here? I ain't doing that. Because I wasn't hurting then.
No.
It was okay, but it wasn't. And they said, no, you'll die. I had 2 inches of blood on my head cavity, in my cavity, my brain cavity. So I said, okay, doc, do what you got to do and don't look back. And they didn't.
No.
Well, what I didn't know, and it touches my heart,
Yeah,
just thinking about the kindness of people.
I know.
Well, when the students and teachers and the administration
So many people.
found out that Randy was in trouble,
Yeah.
they didn't hesitate, but they got out of the classrooms, emptied the offices, went into the auditorium, and began to pray
Yeah.
for me.
I remember.
And then they took up, I think it was a $1,500 offering to give to Cheryl to
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
And then numerous people would chip in to help. I love them.
Yeah. I know you do.
Yeah.
I know you do.
But anyway, so I recovered, and the doctor came in the room saying, Randy, you're a miracle because we thought you would be blind or paralyzed.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. Then he told Cheryl, said, Cheryl, Randy will be here for 2 weeks, and then he'll have to have therapy. But because of prayer, I went home 3 days.
You did. I remember.
Not 1 day of therapy.
No.
Well, now this is where the writing comes in. Well, I had never written anything. I mean, my education through school was minimal because of that injury. And so about 3:30 in the morning, I'm setting up in a recliner because I couldn't rest.
Yeah.
And this is on, I had the operation 05, January the 3rd, 2006. I became instantly
Yep.
a writer.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to back away from it.
I know.
And I could not.
I know.
First I started writing poetry. I said, oh my gosh, I'm writing poetry. Am I going crazy?
I remember. I remember it was definitely out of your. I mean, you always told me stories, and I can remember growing up. Some of my favorite times with you sitting down and telling me stories about the farm you grew up on and things like that. But
Yeah.
I can remember when all that happened very vividly, and I remember it still cracks me up when I walked in there to see Dad after his surgery, and I knew something that had to be God, but I knew Dad would be okay when we got there. When I first got the call, I was worried, but after he got there, why don't you tell them what you told me the first time I saw you?
I made up a joke.
You did.
Something about a squirrel and a walnut.
You did. You said something about removing a walnut from your head or something.
Yeah.
It took me a second, then I thought, oh, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's all right. But
I was
so
making a joke.
So the writing came, it had to be a gift from God, and you've used it to help so many people and touch so many lives. But so tell us a little bit about some of your latest stuff. You've wrote a lot of unique books. Tell us about I don't know if you want to talk about it, but the murder mystery you're working on right now.
Oh, here it is right here.
Yeah.
That's the first one. This is by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
And my fourth murder mystery, and I've written 4. I got more in my head as I've been working on and other adventurous tales I've been doing, and it is quite the journey so far. But I do want to talk about the poetry, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Dad.
Well, I didn't know what to do with the poetry. It wouldn't stop. I couldn't stop.
I remember.
And people want to know, Cheryl especially said, Randy, how are you writing all that? I thought, Cheryl, I don't know. I just am. I can't stop it. It ain't
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep on. Well, I didn't know what to do with poetry, so I would write on little scraps of paper,
Yep.
whatever I get my hands on.
Yep.
At work, I would write stuff. And then I thought, well, why don't I show of all people, the teachers I work with.
Yep.
And they knew me. And I wasn't the Randy Smith like I
Right.
used to be. And they said, Randy, how are you doing this? I said, I don't know. Well, you want to read one? They said, yeah. They read it in tears.
Yeah. Touched a lot of lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one day, and another funny thing about that, I had this big old noisy trash can. I was the custodian, and every day at about 1:30, I had to go to the offices and empty their trash. And I got in the habit of showing them poetry.
Yep.
And later they told me, and I'll tell you a touching story too about that, but they would say, Randy, you did not know this. And that was after I published my first book of poetry. They said, you did not know what we were doing. We waited for you. We had meetings to go to, but we wouldn't.
Yeah, because they wanted to. Yeah, it was
Every day I'd have a
encouraging.
new poem.
Yeah.
So one day I had written this. I was praying, and I felt so urgent. It was such an urgent thing to write a poem on fear. And I did that, and I put it in my pocket. Well, one of the ladies from the office was coming up the hallway, and like my custom was, would you like to read a poem? She said, yes. So she took it. I turned and walked up the hallway and just happened to turn and look around, and she was going,
It's just for her. Yeah. Well, that's how God works. He works, that he used that tragedy to help people, and that's what he does
The thing
often.
about that was when I went down that evening into the trash, she said, Randy, you had no idea how much fear.
Yeah. It's amazing, Dad. That's amazing. I think it's really incredible how God does that and how you allowed him to use you in that way. And guys, my dad has touched so many lives, I can't even tell you. I know one time when I first went to move out, I was 18 years old, and didn't have credit, didn't know anything, and I went to rent from this guy, and he said, well, I don't know, son, you've never lived anywhere else before. Elvin Brown, remember Elvin?
Oh, yeah.
And I said,
know
well,
him.
he goes, who's your dad? I said, well, Randy Smith. And he goes, you mean the guy from the high school? I said, yeah. He goes, you can move in tomorrow. And so, I've always been proud of you, Dad, and really proud of your accomplishments and what you've done and how you've used God. God has used you to help people, and you've touched so many lives. But I appreciate you coming on, and guys, you need to check him out. I'm going to drop all of his social links in the podcast and in the video, so you guys can go and check out his poetry, his mystery books. He's wrote so many things, and it's been an inspiration to me. And I just wanted to share this with you guys and let you guys meet my dad. He's an incredible man, and I'm thankful. And it's where I get this love for mystery from. But Dad, why don't you read us one of your poems? I know you got one on the top of your head. So
okay, how about let's see, what's the name of that thing? No, that's too long. Obscurity. That's one I'd like to do. Obscurity,
Okay.
Because in reality, before the surgery, I was pretty obscure.
Sure.
I'm still an obscure person, and that's just
Yeah.
not everybody knows me. But it goes like this: in some obscure village in far-off China land, there sits a little Chinaman, alone with cup in hand. Perhaps this hour he contemplates the work that day demands, or do his thoughts begin to turn to men in other lands? I feel somewhat saddened at his obscurity. Then I begin to realize that I'm as obscure as he.
It still blows my mind that all that happened in the area that I grew up. I don't remember any of that encounter. I was so young, but I hope you guys enjoyed that tonight. And the longer this channel goes on, I've got really big plans. I want to do a documentary on all this whole area. It's such a strange area. I had 3 Bigfoot encounters all within a 5-mile radius of where my dad had this UFO encounter, and it really intrigues me. There's a lot of strange stuff that happened in the area that I grew up. And one of these days, I'm going to do a long format podcast on all that and break all of that down and tie this all together. But Guys, thanks for the support. I appreciate everybody that is either a member or just subscribed, or if you guys just watch and love my content, I appreciate it. Make sure you like and share, tell your friends about it. And this is a really safe place for you guys to share your encounters. And for you guys who are brand new to this channel, every single Monday I drop a new episode, and hopefully you guys see the value in what we're doing here at Mysteries Unknown. We love doing this and appreciate all the support. Guys, one thing that I want you to take away from this podcast: stay prayed up. It is so very important. We will see you in the next episode.
I wake up every day and that mountain is still standing right in front of me, and I don't know if I have the strength to climb it today. That might be you in this moment. There is a mountain in front of you. It is so big, and you don't know how you're going to overcome that. But God is the author and finisher of our faith, and that lets me know that He wrote my story before eternity began. He took out His pen and He wrote the story of my life, and He knew that that mountain would be right here, and today I'd be facing this specific mountain. But He gave me what I needed to climb over that mountain, and He will walk through that mountain and that trial with me. Sometimes we got to climb over a mountain to gain the strength that we need to do what God wants us to do. So just know that God wrote your beginning, your middle, but He also wrote your end, and we win. We win. If our faith is in Christ, you're going to win. You're going to overcome that mountain, that storm, that tribulation, whatever that is. So hold on to His strength and His promises. I assure you, He has never, not one time, left you or forsaken you. He has you right here in the middle of your story. He wrote it, so He knows how it ends. I hope that encourages you today. I love each and every one of you, but more importantly, He loves you. We'll see you next video. Don't give up hope. Peace.